Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Campaign Catch-Up. I am John Stolnis, and joining me here to talk about some breaking news going on in Trump world with regard to his cabinet selections is CBN News chief political analyst David Brody and CBN's podcast host of Quick Start, Dan Andros. Fellas, we have got some breaking news to talk to the people about. How you guys doing?
Doing well.
Doing great.
So the big news as we are sitting down, I mean, this news is about a half an hour old as we're sitting down to record here today, is Matt Gaetz, President-elect Trump's pick to be the Attorney General, has withdrawn his name from consideration. There's obviously been a lot of speculation that something like this could happen. Donald Trump was asked about it earlier this week, and he had said that he was not going to pull Gaetz, but Gaetz has done the job himself. In a post on social media, Gaetz wrote that he had excellent meetings with senators yesterday on Wednesday. He said, "I appreciate their thoughtful feedback and the incredible support of many. While the momentum was strong, it's clear that my confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition." He said, "There's no time to waste on a needlessly protracted Washington scuffle." And then Donald Trump on Truth Social said that that he appreciated Gaetz's efforts and was doing, and that he appreciated that Gaetz didn't want to be a distraction and essentially wished him well. So, David, one day after the House Ethics Committee voted not to release their report on Gaetz, and one day after he was on Capitol Hill trying to curry support among some reluctant Republican senators, we get the news today that he's taken his name out of the running. What's your reaction?
Well, I go to the Hamilton the musical is where I go. First off, where there's a line that says, "You're never going to be president." Now, I wouldn't sing it, but you're never going to be president. Well, how about this one? You're never going to be attorney general. And the truth of the matter is you know that senators were giving it to him straight and said, "You got no shot." Trump then knew that at that point, and Trump wasn't going to go recess appointment on this because ultimately it would be, I mean, to do a recess appointment right out of the gate on Attorney General, one of the most consequential cabinet picks out there, that's not a good look, especially for someone that has a mandate. So the whole thing was just kind of crumbling. So that wasn't going to happen. And, you know, this was a train wreck. It was a train wreck from the beginning. And the question to me, guys, and Dan, I'm curious to get your take on this, is what was he thinking? I mean, you know, I get that Gaetz is a muckraker. I get that Gaetz is going to turn over a few tables at the DOJ. That's fine. I got no problem with that. My issue is, aren't there a few other people that might not have a House Ethics Committee investigation going on at the same time? I mean, you know, where's the MAGA bench? I mean, they got plenty of folks that could do this and turn over a few tables without the baggage of Matt Gaetz. So you can go to the loyalty issue, you know, maybe he's loyal to Gaetz, and that's part of it. But, you know, of course, the other side of this real quick is some folks in the conservative land will say, well, this was just, I shouldn't say conservative land, excuse me, liberal land will say, well, this was just all a ploy right from the beginning, that the whole idea here was to resign his congressional seat. Because he didn't want that House Ethics Committee report to come out, and this was a way to do it. That they knew that ultimately this was never going to work out. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to prove that, but Dan, that's my take.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, it certainly fuels that speculation, right? Because, you know, the quick resignation, as John talked about last week when we were on this, like that was kind of an unusual move. You know, usually you wait till you get through the confirmation process, right, before you actually get in there. And the fact that this potential report was coming, and then I even look at like Trump's statement here, right? And it's a little different because, you know, Gaetz himself withdrew. So, and Gaetz is not the type of guy that's like one to back down from a fight, right? I mean, this is the last thing that this guy does. So it certainly does fuel that speculation that maybe this was a favor done to like a Trump loyalist in Gaetz, that, hey, this is a way to, you won't have to go through all this hassle of going through this report and dealing with all that, you know, and we'll see where he lands in the future. And maybe some of that will tell, because, I mean, you guys would know the inner workings better than me as to where he potentially could land, which, if he's going to go back into Congress, if he's going to go into the Senate, or what is he going to do here from there? But certainly just the way this is played out, and Trump's sort of quick, sort of very clear and concise statement. He's not upset about it. He's not like, you know, throwing a fit in any way and being mad about it. It certainly seems like it feels expected.
Yeah, there's three options with Gaetz. You know, there's been talk about him running at some point for governor of Florida. So there could be that. But some time's going to have to pass, obviously, before that. In terms of going back to the House, I mean, technically, under the Constitution, it's a long story. Bottom line is that he'd have to run in a special election. I mean, he technically resigned, and Mike Johnson, the Speaker, accepted his resignation on the spot. I mean, he's resigned from Congress. So he'd have to run in a special election to get his seat back. The other option is DeSantis naming him to be Rubio's replacement in the Senate. So that's interesting as well. So those are the three kind of potentials here. Yeah.
Now, David, I had seen, and I don't know if this reporting is correct, but I've seen it in some other places, is that he resigned, when he resigned his House seat, he resigned from this current session of Congress, but that because he was reelected, that he's still eligible to serve in the next Congress. So maybe that's kind of an end run around, but you wonder, even if that's the case, has the damage kind of been done here? I mean, if he does end up trying to win a special election, as you say, or he is able to kind of just take his seat in the next term of Congress because he was elected, doesn't then that call for the House ethics report to come to light again? Like, doesn't in order for that to go away, doesn't he kind of need to pull away from Congress entirely, at least for a time, before he's able to whether it's in the Senate or whether in the House? It seems to me like this Health Ethics Committee report is just hanging over his head if he ever wants to have anything to do with Congress again.
Yeah, no, you're right. And so it wouldn't make much sense for him to go back there and then have the report released. And let's just be clear, that report's getting released either way. I mean, parts of it have already been released, and the whole thing will get released whether or not the House Ethics Committee votes to release it or not. So let's just be clear, that's coming out. And I can tell you, and I can't talk in detail about this, but I've talked to a couple of sources that do indeed tell me that a lot more stuff about Gaetz is about to drop. And he knew that. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. So that would make me think that he's going to kind of go into political pasture land for a while, and then maybe kind of come back. Because in America, people love to reinvent themselves, and this might be one of those cases, guys.
Well, I think the next steps here are interesting with some of Trump's other nominees who have been making headlines. Of course, Pete Hegseth, who is his nominee to take over at the Pentagon, and RFK Jr. slated to take over as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. News continues to flow this week about those two gentlemen. Let's start with Hegseth here first. More details about a sexual assault allegation back in 2017. You had with RFK Jr., Mike Pence and Eric Erickson, two conservative voices, both come out strongly against him for his abortion stance in the past. And so you have two more nominees now with the spotlight off of Gaetz, Dan. It can almost now fully turn to some of Trump's other picks that are garnering some criticism, obviously among the left, but even among some Republicans who are wary of those two. At least want to hear more from them. They're not going to necessarily just rubber stamp those two nominees like they might say like Marco Rubio or Congressman Waltz or something like that. So my question is, does Gaetz pulling his name from consideration, does that now focus more spotlight on these two gentlemen, Hegseth and RFK Jr., and does it put their positions in a little bit more peril?
I don't know if it puts it in peril. I mean, the left's certainly going to, I mean, we're seeing it with Hegseth, which is an interesting one to me, that they're going after this guy on things like the cross tattoo that he has, and making a whole deal out of that. I find that it feels to me like this is standard run of the mill sort of, the Democrats have to put up a stink. They just sat here for the last 6 months to a year during the Trump campaign talking about all these horrible things that Trump was going to do when he gets in. So it's like, if you just sit there and you're quiet as he's nominating all these people, well, their constituents will probably be like, well, wait a minute, you were just talking about all these threats and look at these people. So it feels like to me they're sort of coming up with the best things they can come up with here to raise a stink. But I don't know that it's going to actually, because at least a lot of the claims I've seen on someone like Hegseth they're not really substantial claims here, as far as, you look at them and go, oh, wow, something's there. I don't know much. I have not looked into the sexual assault allegations, but again, this is the same thing that happened, to this Kavanaugh, right? This was, you dig up someone from high school, who knows what actually happened or didn't happen, but what you get are the headlines all over the place. And the left does seem particularly bent on going after Hegseth. I'm not sure, maybe David knows more why they're going after Hegseth more than some of the other ones, but it seems like standard fare, opposition attack to me at this point.
Well, the difference between this and Kavanaugh is that in Hegseth's case, regarding this new allegation of the sexual assault that was settled, he settled that case. I mean, in other words, there was a financial payout from Hegseth to this person that was bringing the charge. Now, once again, Hegseth denying all wrongdoing, but there was a payment. With Brett Kavanaugh, there wasn't a payment. So there's that. But beyond all of that, I think the big concern about Hegseth and Trump world is the surprise factor. You know, they didn't know this. Now, you can argue they should have known that. Where's the vetting process? We can have a separate campaign catch-up about that. But at this point, they're pretty ticked because it's like, well, wait a minute. Why didn't you tell us about this? You know, because, of course, the question is always like, what's going to come up? Well, what do you know? And he didn't reveal this. And now this is out. So that rubs Trump world the wrong way, and I get that for sure. I think RFK is going to be confirmed. I think this Make America Healthy Again mantra has traction. I think especially with moms and parents and constituents in each district, and I guess for this case it'd be U.S. senators. I think they'll hear from people saying, "Hey, look, we want RFK to go after." Whatever, the drug manufacturers or, you know, the FDA. And I mean, I think he's got more ability to get through. The pro-life issue is an issue. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think that's driving it this time around. It might have done that 5 years ago. I don't think it does today. I think Tulsi Gabbard's going to be an interesting one, too, though, because, you know, not just with the meeting with Assad, but, you know, stuff about Iran and other things, just about she's definitely not been on the GOP reservation. And I think that could be a problem, but we'll see.
Given the nature of some of the candidates we've been talking about, or the potential nominees that we've been talking about, there's a lot of conversation right now, too, about whether or not Trump would appoint these folks through recess appointments when the next Congress rolls around. And we've heard from Speaker Mike Johnson. We've heard from the incoming Senate Majority Leader Senator Thune that they are at least open to the possibility of Congress being recessed in order to perhaps move some of these potential nominees forward. And you know, Dan, I think that certainly would set a precedent moving forward. Trump, if that were to happen and the Supreme Court were to allow it, which again, those are still very, very much open questions, whether or not there's reason to believe the Supreme Court wouldn't allow it based on some previous precedents. But should they do that? Should Republicans allow Congress to be recessed and the nominations go through? Kind of opens the door down the road for Democrats when they return to power, because they will someday. I mean, this is just it's how it works, you know. What you do now could have an effect down the road, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on whether or not this is a good idea for the Trump team to pursue recess appointments, or whether to just continue to allow the Senate's advise and consent role, which it's always been in place, whether that should remain.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not it's a good idea or not, I'm not sure I'm 100% decided on that one way or the other at the moment. What I will tell you is it seems like the appetite for doing things the old way seems to be less and less on the Republican side of things. I think what you're seeing on the Republican side are people who are kind of fed up and tired at what they perceive as the left, sort of pushing these things to their furthest extremes, to where you can, use the DOJ and abusing the DOJ, Department of Justice, things of this, any procedure that they perceive the left has been pushing the envelope on, or, flagrantly, potentially abusing them. I think you're seeing a real movement on the right now to say, you know what, we're sick of playing it the right way and playing it the safe way while they're doing this. We're going to do it the same way. And so you're going to play these games, we're going to play them too. And so whether or not I think it's a good idea or not, I think is less important than I think that a lot of people on the right now are like saying, yes, like we need to do what we need to do to get our agenda through.
Well, I think here's the calculation, right? So recess appointments are typically done when the other party is blocking your nominee. But if you got Republicans that are having problems with it, then you don't do a recess appointment. You pull the nomination, which is what happened with Gaetz. That could happen with RFK, could happen with Tulsi, Pete Hegseth, potentially. I don't see it necessarily. Maybe with Hegseth, potentially. The other two I don't see. But the reason that's the point, right? I mean, if the Democrats are blocking you, but you have the whole Republican conference ahead on board, then you have that mandate, and Trump should do the recess appointment. It would make sense. He would have standing, if you will, to do that, or at least some bandwidth to do it. But if your own party is against you, then no way. And let's remember also that recess appointments are not new. I mean, they're controversial, don't get me wrong, but they're not new. And to be clear, they haven't been done in a while, but Obama did over 50 of them. One of his recess appointments was Deputy Attorney General. Bill Clinton did over 100, 138, I think. I'll double check that figure, but it's over 100. George W. Bush did them too. So look, that they were done at one point. And so you ask, why were recess appointments even done in the first place? Because it is actually in the Constitution that this is allowed under Article 2, Section 2. And the reason is that back in the day, the founders were only meeting roughly for about 9 months or so out of a 24-month period, a 2-year congressional session. They were only meeting 9 months. So the work had to go on in those other months. And so there was a sense there that the recess appointments needed to happen to make sure government could function while Congress was away.
Well, there's still a lot more we're gonna be hearing about Trump's cabinet picks, and there's still more cabinet selections to come. But switching gears real quick, I want to talk a little bit about another piece of news that came out of the Capitol this week, and that was Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace is filing a bill that would make it illegal for transgender women, or would bar transgender women from using women's bathroom and other gender protected facilities at the Capitol. It would require everyone to use those spaces in accordance to the gender of their birth. This is aimed at Democratic Representative-elect Sarah McBride, who is the first transgender woman elected to Congress. House Speaker Mike Johnson has voiced his support for the bill. McBride said in a statement that she doesn't want to fight over bathrooms and will work hard for her constituents. Those are her words. So I guess, David, this is certainly touching on an issue that is at the forefront of, I think, what a lot of Americans were saying at the ballot box this fall. Like this, they want to have a conversation about transgender rights. They want to have a conversation about what should be allowed, what should not be allowed. And here's Congresswoman Mace, who is kind of planting a flag here up on Capitol Hill on this issue. What's your take on this?
Well, it's a flag of common sense. And John, that's the point. This isn't about the transgender movement. It isn't about, name the topic. It's just about common sense. Let's go back to the book of Genesis, and we know exactly how God saw the genders, and as in two, male and female. That's it, period. End of discussion. Let's move on. Thanks for joining us tonight. I mean, that's it, guys. And so she's just doing the common sense thing. But today, in our woke 180 world, if you will, this all of a sudden becomes controversial. And I understand why it's, quote, controversial, because of the times we live in. But I think she's just, like I said, laying the common sense flag here. And I think there's bandwidth, and I think there's energy to get something like this through Congress, because I think part of the mandate in this election was people just saying, look, enough of politics as usual. We want things done, and we also want to return to common sense. I think that was a part of it, and I think this helps. And I just want to be clear, and before I say this, I just want to do a disclaimer and say, just because you disagree with someone who is identifying as a transgender woman or anything, there needs to be no harassment. There needs to be, we need to look at everybody with dignity. We need to, just really pray for them. And we need to not be vindictive and be mean. That's the truth. Having said that, we don't have the visual here. At some point, maybe we'll put it up later on in another show. But Sarah McBride, she identifies as a transgender woman, but she's a man. I don't want us to lose sight of that. I think that's important, because why would Nancy Mace literally be saying another woman couldn't use the women's restroom? No, she's saying a man can't use the women's restroom. And if we put it in those terms, well, wouldn't everybody agree with that? Maybe not the hard left. So, once again, Sarah McBride is Tim McBride. That's his name. And to be clear, not to get into the anatomical aspects of this, but it's a man. And so a man is going into the woman's restrooms on Capitol Hill, or in terms of that's what she does not want. And so if you look at it that way, and we don't have the visual, but you can see the side by side of Tim McBride and Sarah McBride. And Tim McBride was at American University as late as his college years, and then transitioned. So I think and the reason I'm bringing all of this up, the point here is that you have to talk about it in those terms. Otherwise, people will just kind of buy into this. It's just a transgender woman. What's the problem? We all should have rights. It's not about that. It's a man. It's a man. And I just wanted to be very clear about that.
Yeah. Well, and remember, Nancy Mace is a rape survivor. Right. So, you can question why she's doing this now, and if it's just all, if it's for show or to make a point or whatever. She's someone who survived, a sexual assault. So, this is what we hear the rhetoric a lot from the left is like that we need to listen to these people. We need to care about them. And that's, I think, one of the big problems that a lot of people have right now is it's not that we can't have compassion for someone who has trouble identifying, with the gender that the sex that they actually are, right? And they come up with something different. It's not that we don't have compassion for them. I think where the frustration is being forced to then have to change everything in your life to accommodate this person. And it's like, we're supposed to care about feelings, but it only seems to go one way. There's this one person here and we all have to care for what they think and forget about what all the other women think that might be uncomfortable with having a male go into their bathroom for whatever reason, even if they think it's correct. Like, you're not considering the feelings of the other person. And I think that's something that maybe a lot of people on the right are feeling that perhaps this election indicated, or at least potentially indicates, that maybe people in common society are a little fed up with being forced to do certain things and say certain things based on sensitivity. And I don't think anyone, for a while, I think that there's been sort of a lot of ground gained by the LGBTQ movement because people kind of were soft to this for a time. But I think maybe perhaps they've taken it a little too far when we see the men competing in women's sports and you see them getting dominated and you're just like, what are we doing here? And I think that sentiment is potentially spilling over a little bit. The pendulum might be swinging a little bit back. And I think Nancy Mace is perhaps, planting the flag in the ground, like you were saying, to kind of maybe take a stand here.
And John, just a quick addendum to that as well. There are unisex bathrooms. So, I mean, this is not like a situation like, oh, well, now she can't use the restroom. Like it's 1951 or something like that in America. That's not it, guys. I mean, I say guys, I mean, world. I mean, it just isn't it. I mean, there are unisex bathrooms and they're typically right next to the woman and men's rooms. So look, that's the quote accommodation, if you will. So please, I just don't want to, it'd be one thing if we were just like, well, wait a minute, now this person has to walk, a half a mile or, down the hallway and around that might be one It's not, it just isn't.
Well, let's finish up on something completely different as we make a real smooth transition here into the last thing, and that is the trend. I don't know if you guys have seen this. The trend now, kind of in the sports world, is in football we've always had special celebrations in the end zone when players score touchdowns. In soccer there's always been special celebrations. Baseball's kind of getting more into that now. One of the main things we're seeing right now are athletes doing the Trump dance in celebration of big moments. You see some graphics right there. The 49ers players doing it, dancing around, and it's the Trump dance we see when he's on stage, an Ultimate Fighting Champion. And Trump was actually at that performance. He's there clapping, you can see. So this is obviously catching on like wildfire here. Dan and David, you're both sports guys like me. We're really involved in the sports world as well. Dan, are you getting a kick out of this? Yeah.
I am obsessed with the fact that this is happening. Okay. Yeah. It's really amazing because remember, these are people who, when Trump was in the White House the first time, a lot of these pro athletes were like taking a stand, like I'm not going to the White House, I'm taking a stand. And it's like, now they're all in the field. This is the popular celebration. They're all doing the Trump dance. And it's just wild to see this turnaround. And I don't know, maybe part of it is just people like again, who feel like perhaps they've been having to remain hidden, you know, or they're just frustrated. Maybe they don't even like Trump per se, but they're just frustrated in the fact that they feel like they can't say anything in today's society. And like, this is the outpouring of that emotion of going, you know what? I'm just saying what I want. I don't care. I'm just going to say it. And like, whatever your political views are, the Trump dance is becoming the way to say that. That's what it seems like to me. I could be misreading it. Maybe they're just having fun with it, but I don't know. I think it could be something a little bigger.
I think you make a great point, Dan. And I'll just say 3 other things about this quickly. First of all, it's fun, right? It's a fun dance. So I think there's something to be said about that. It's just, but I think on a deeper level, I'm not going to try to, do some sort of dissertation about this or release a PDF file of 102 pages. But why are they're doing that in what? Wait for it. Celebration. It's a victory dance. It's a fight. It's all of what Trump represents. And once again, I'm not suggesting that they're thinking all of this through like I just said there. And I don't mean that as a disparaging comment. I just mean that the point is, I think it's synonymous with Trump, which is he overcame a lot against the odds. He's victorious. And that dance is representative of all of that. And I think that once again, you can't prove it in a test tube, and you can ask everybody why they do it, and they'll all have maybe different reasons. But I think the common denominator ultimately is that it's a victory celebration. And if you're going to, the point is that you're going to put Trump and victory and celebration together. It's not about even Trump. It's more about what he represents. And what he represents, and I've always said that after Butler on July 13th, fight, 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 those 3 words, that day when we were doing some stuff, guys, on YouTube here, when we were talking about it, that's what won him the election. Because people are like, oh, dang, he just got shot in the face, all right, in the ear, and it grazed him, I got it. But he just got shot, and then he got up with blood on his face. Okay, I got it. Maybe it wasn't as much blood. It was blood. It was still blood. And he's going fight, fight, fight. That said, listen, you don't need a campaign commercial. That's it, everything.
I just want to say to your point, Mark Zuckerberg was on TV not long after that, like saying how amazed he was at that. Now, this guy, as far as I know, is a lifelong, liberal Democrat, right? Yeah. And so for him to be saying, you know what, that was kind of amazing. He used more colorful language than this, but he said that was amazing. Like that was incredible. And so, yeah, that moment there, when I saw Zuckerberg do that, I thought exactly what you just said.
Well, and maybe that was also a light bulb moment for a lot of folks to say, wait a minute, the media has been telling us this guy's the devil. This media has been telling us, he's Hitler. But look at him. He's got spunk. He's got fight. And by the way, we haven't talked about Morning Joe. I guess we got to go. Shoot.
Next time.
We need to do that, though.
We got to do that. I got a lot to say about that. Don't cut me off. Where's my microphone?
Well, that'll do it for this. No, I'm just kidding. No, but there is so much we could get to when someday we're going to make an hour long version of this show, and we'll do it on the way out. Do a version of this show where we can just expound on all of the news of the day. There's a lot we didn't get to, but for sure, the Trump cabinet stuff and what we're seeing up on Capitol Hill certainly taking precedence right now, and we'll see how it all shakes out over the next week. Until we talk again, folks, David Brody, Dan Andros, thank you so much for your time. Always appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, John.